Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I am happy to welcome you to this continuing series of webinars sponsored by Better Brains for Babies. My name is Diane Bales. I am one of the co-directors of Better Brains for Babies. I am a professor and extension specialist at the University of Georgia. And I am excited today to welcome a presenter that I've known for a long time. Bridget, I don't even remember how many years it's been since we were in trainings together and all kinds of other things. But Bridget Ratajczak is the Child and Family Development Manager at the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. She's also CDC's ACT Early Ambassador to Georgia, and she's going to talk to us today about supporting families through developmental monitoring. If you've got questions as she goes along, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to monitor the chat for her, and we'll fill her in as we go. We'll also have some time for questions and discussion and so on as we get to the end. Bridget, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Diane. And I am really excited to be here this morning and share this information with you. So this morning, we're going to talk about several different things. We're going to talk about developmental monitoring, what it is and why it's important. We're going to talk about Learn the Signs, Act Early and the different resources that they offer, and also the different resources that DeepCal offers. We're going to also talk about how you can use these resources to support families that you work with. Just one thing to clarify, because some people get confused, DeCal is also right from the start. So we actually have the honor of having the longest state type agency with the longest title or name in the whole state. So we're the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning right from the start. So some people know us as one or the other and get really confused about how we work together. But so I wanted to just kind of start off with the definition of family engagement that we work with. Many years ago, there was a task force that came together and created this definition of family engagement, which is the shared responsibility of families, early education programs, schools, and communities to actively promote, support, and sustain family well-being, healthy child development, strong family-child relationships, and lifelong learning for all children and families. And I like to start off with that just to kind of give us that foundation that many times in early education or in education in general, family engagement is thought of as what can the family do for the school, and also like what information can we impart on the families about how to support their children's learning. And I like to think of it more of as a two-way street, as a relationship between the family and the school or their education and support programs, so that we can help to support the family in a multitude of ways and make sure, because we know that a healthy family is the foundation for a healthy child. So to start off with, we're going to talk about what is developmental monitoring. So developmental monitoring is kind of the beginning of looking at a child's development, and it's can be done by anyone, and it's basically just observing how a child plays, how they learn, speak, and act. It's looking at a milestone checklist to see where they are in their development. But the difference between monitoring and other forms of evaluation is that it's ongoing, it's flexible. There's no specific training that's required, and really anyone who supports a child, who knows that child, can monitor their development. So we've created this infographic that kind of gives outlines the differences between developmental monitoring, developmental screening, and developmental evaluation. I know that a lot of programs do formal developmental screenings, but the monitoring is really the beginning of that, as I said previously. It can be done by any caregiver. They look at the milestones, looking at the milestone checklists, and it's really done at any time between birth to 5 years of age. It's a way to celebrate child's development, to discuss progress with professionals, and to learn what to expect next. And then, of course, to identify those concerns early. Screening, on the other hand, is done by healthcare providers, teachers, other providers who've been trained on the screening instrument. And it's also to monitor developmental milestones. And the AAP recommends that developmental screening be done at specific ages, 9, 18, and 30 months, and then autism screenings at 18 and 24 months. So it's a more formal process, and it does require training to do a developmental screening. And then, of course, if there are concerns in a developmental screening, then we go on for a developmental evaluation, which is done by either a developmental pediatrician, a child psychologist, or other trained providers such as special education teachers and early intervention specialists. So just wanted to clarify the difference there, because a lot of times those three terms are used interchangeably, but in the field of practice, they're actually very different. So using both developmental monitoring and screening is more successful in identifying children with delays in developmental disabilities earlier on. Excuse me, that children who receive both, research has found that children who have received both monitoring and screening on a regular basis and wind up having delays are going to be identified earlier and are going to have greater success later in their lives. So what are some of the resources that are offered through the Learn the Signs Act Early program? So several years ago, actually over 15 years ago, the CDC started the program called Learn the Signs Act Early as a way to provide resources to identify children with autism earlier. But they quickly learned that it wasn't just beneficial for children with autism, but it was beneficial for children of all types with any type of delay or disability. The name of the program, of course, is Learn the Signs, Act Early, and it's indicative of what we need to do. We need to know what the signs are for delays, and we need to act as early as possible, because we know that there's more going on in a child's brain development-wise in those first 5 years than any other time in life. By the time a child is 5 years old, their brain is 80 to 90% the size of an adult brain, and infants and toddlers are making billions of neural connections per second. And so lots and lots going on in those brains. And so when we identify delays and concerns early, we have a better chance of helping to support that child and helping to help them reach their fullest potential. So let's go over the Learn the Signs Act Early program and all of the amazing resources that they offer. First of all, the key word of the day today is going to be free. All of these resources through Learn the Signs Act Early are free, and they're available to anyone who would like to order them. The website is here, the cdc.gov/actearly, and I'm going to walk you through how to get some of these materials. But first, let me just show this nice video that talks about how families can use the Learn the Signs Act Early resources.
Clara is our first child, and we didn't know what to expect being first-time parents. And it's just been such a fun experience to watch her grow. Starting out very early, we monitored Clara's development using the Learn the Signs Act Early checklist. It was just an amazing resource to be able to say, okay, you know, this is what she should be doing at this age, and it calmed our fears a little bit.
I would have to say my favorite resource of the Learn the Signs Act Early would be the app. But having the app readily available has honestly been great, and it's been awesome just seeing her development and growth. The Learn the Signs Act Early app is actually very easy to use. I can access it right there on my phone, and whenever my mind kind of pops to it, I can open it up.
I think I am a Learn the Signs Act Early super user. The Learn the Signs Act Early materials have been invaluable to me because I feel like they've been there with me throughout parenthood in kind of the way that a wise old friend might be.
Using Learn the Signs Act Early has helped me monitor my daughter's development and gives me a great peace of mind that the information is accurate and it's backed by science. It's fun to see when she achieves a milestone. I feel very proud for her and excited.
And it's not just a milestone of, is my child doing this next thing? It's what should I be working with my child next? Because that can be a big question mark as a first-time parent.
You know, I want to know if maybe she's lagging farther behind than she really should, and that's something to bring up with our pediatrician.
Having something at my fingertips to kind of go through it with her physician. She's hitting these milestones, but not these other milestones. Should I be concerned? What kinds of things can I do to bring her up to speed? And then taking that and translating it with her teachers in her classroom to make sure these are the things I would like to focus on, and how can we work together to make sure that she's developing appropriately.
The Learn the Signs, Act Early resources empower parents to take a stake in tracking their child's developmental milestones.
All right, so that gives you kind of a nice little summary of the different things, and I'm going to go over these in a bit more in depth now. So the cornerstone of the Learn the Signs Act Early resources is the developmental milestone checklist. There are 12 checklists. They range from 2 months to 5 years. And if you look at these ages, you'll kind of see that they align with the recommended ages for well health visits with the child's medical provider. And that's purposeful from the CDC to make sure that families have a way to communicate with their child's healthcare provider about their child's development. One of the main goals of these resources is for families to be able to have a communication tool for them to understand their child's development and be able to communicate with other professionals about their child and their child's development. So the milestones are broken down into 4 different domains. There's social emotional, language and communication, cognitive, and movement and physical development. In addition to that, each milestone checklist has a set of questions for families to kind of help bring up that conversation about their child's development. And it's also for medical providers in order to be able to kind of start that conversation. Sometimes that conversation can be a little difficult, especially when there are concerns, and either family members or the professional might feel a little uncomfortable with bringing it up. But these are real basic questions about what are some things you like to do with your child? What are some things that you and your child do together? Are there any things that you're concerned about? Those types of things. And then in addition to that, there's also on each checklist, there's a long set of tips and activity ideas of things that families can do with their child to help encourage their child's development. These were all created in conjunction with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they're all research-based activities and tips and things. So really, really wonderful resource. It's available on the CDC's website, and I'm also going to show you where you can find these checklists on the DECAL website, because we have also taken these and made them a little bit more accessible. And then in the video, they also talked about the app, and the app is really a neat tool that makes the milestone checklist very accessible and very user-friendly. On the app, it's free to download in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. And you want to look for the blue icon with the multicolored path. And the app is super helpful because you just put in the child's name and date of birth, and it automatically populates with the age-appropriate checklist. And you just go through and you mark that they're doing it, they're not yet doing it, or you're not sure if they're doing those skills. You go through the checklist, and then when you're finished, you can actually email a report to yourself, to the medical provider, to a teacher, to a co-parent who maybe isn't living in the same home. So it's a wonderful way to be able to share information about the child's development. They also have the tips and activities on the app. Prior to February, they also had photos and videos that showed what the milestones looked like. Those were taken down. I'm going to talk to you about the revisions in just a few minutes. And They are working on redoing those. Because of the pandemic, they were not able to get into childcare programs and all to do the recordings and the videos, recording of the videos and the photos. They're working on those, and they hope to have them up at the beginning of the year. The app is available in English and Spanish. The milestone checklists are also all available in English and Spanish, and there are other languages that it has been translated into. If you have a family that you're wanting the milestone checklists in a different language, if you'll let me know, I can find out what languages, if they're available in that language. So, and then another resource that they have available on the website is an online checklist. So you can go to the website and click on it and fill out the checklist online, and then again, email a report. This just kind of shows what it's like to fill out the online checklist. Again, that's at that cdc.gov/actearly, or I'll also tell you about what it looks like in where you can find it in our decal website in just a moment. And then this shows you how you can get the forward the email to yourself to after you filled out that online checklist. So I mentioned that in February, the CDC published revisions to the checklists. In those revisions, they added 15 and 30-month checklists. So now the checklists align with all of the well-child visits that are recommended in those first 5 years by the American Academy of Pediatrics. The milestones were also revised so that now they are skills that 75% of children meet at that age. And if a child is missing a milestone, the recommendation is that they should be referred for screening. Prior to these revisions, there were a lot of questions about when to refer a child for screening. And so this is like how many milestones should they be missing and that type of thing. So the revisions were done in order to help clarify things. They also removed the watch for this section that was on the milestone checklists, because the information, the feedback that they got from stakeholders was that that was confusing. Because it was like, do you only refer for screening if they're doing these things in the watch for this section, or do they, when do you refer? I think it was the biggest question, and there was a lot of confusion about that. Then they expanded the tips section significantly, probably about doubling the number of tips. They added tips related to social emotional growth for young children, and also some tips related to screen time and nutrition. So definitely a lot more useful information in the tips section. So why did the CDC revise the developmental milestones? There were lots of reasons. One of them was to offer the free milestone checklist for every well-child health visit, as I said, to assign milestones to ages when most children, or 75% or more of them, would have reached them, and then to address parents and early childhood professionals' feedback that having a very similar milestone checklist ages was confusing. So in some of the milestones, in one checklist, it would say they may do this, or they do this sometimes. And then on the next checklist, it would say they do it all the time, or they do it independently. And so having that may and sometimes and those types of kind of wishy-washy words made it really confusing. Now, the CDC is very aware of the fact that there have been some concerns about some of the milestones that were left off of the checklists, or some of the places that milestones were the checklist that they were placed on, the ages they were placed on. And they have been talking to some of the professional organizations. One of the things that was somewhat limiting was that one of their requirements was that there was research published about when those milestones occurred. And I know that crawling is one of the milestones that was left off of the checklists, and that many professionals had concerns about. And the reason for that was because there was not any research that showed when 75% of children are crawling. And so they felt like it did not meet the criterion that they had set, and they left it off for that reason. It does not mean that crawling is not an important milestone. It just meant that there was not good, solid research and evidence to show when 75% of children crawl. Another concern was that speaking a certain number of words was on the 30-month checklist, and people were concerned that that might be too late for referrals. But again, that was what was backed by the research that's out in the field. And the biggest thing was that issue was that there's just not a whole lot of research out there that talks about when children meet certain developmental milestones. So they started looking at thousands of research articles and honed it down to just several dozen that actually had evidence that talked about when children met certain milestones. So it was a very in-depth process. It started, I believe, in 2018, and they had a committee of national experts from across the country who worked together from a whole bunch of different fields who worked together. There is an article in Pediatrics online magazine that if anyone is interested, I can get you the link to that, that talks about the process that they went through for these revisions. So another resource that they have that is really handy is the Milestone Moments booklet. The Milestone Moments booklet has all of the checklists in one booklet, also has some of the tips and a place for families to record things. So it's kind of a nice baby book kind of thing for development, but also something that they can keep in the diaper bag and carry back and forth to appointments and such. So it's a nice thing to be able to share with families. I know a lot of programs will give a copy of the Milestone Moments booklet to families when they enter the program as kind of a gift, and also use it as a way to communicate with families, especially home visiting programs and things like that, because it's something that's easily portable and easy to have access to. Although I personally think that the app is the best way to do that these days, just because it's you don't have to use paper. You can order these on the CDC website. The shipping is free. They come directly to you. And if you just look for the free materials button on the CDC website. So, and then I mentioned the milestones in action. That's the photos and videos of the milestones that demonstrate what they look like. And again, that will hopefully be back up again by the beginning of next year. As I said, because of the pandemic, they haven't been able to get into childcare programs to do the recording and photos that they want to be able to really demonstrate what these milestones look like. Another really cool resource is this growth chart, which has both the milestones and also has the recommendations for childhood vaccines and when those should occur. So it's a really nice poster to give out to families to have on their wall. I like to tell the story that a couple of years ago, we renovated our kitchen, and in doing so, we took out the wall that we had used to mark our children's height and growth. And so I now have a big old piece of wall board down in my basement that I'm trying to figure out what to do with it, because I could not part with that. But I kind of wish I had that paper growth chart so that it would be a lot easier to be able to keep that. And this is English on one side and Spanish on the other. So it has activities and things like that. Another really great resource that the CDC offers is the Amazing Me books. There is a board book for 1-year-olds called Baby's Busy Day. There are paperback books called Where is Bear? A Terrific Tale for 2-year-olds, and Amazing Me, It's Busy Being 3. And these books are really nice because as you're reading the story, it tells you, it tells the adult what milestones the characters are demonstrating. And then in the back of the book, they have the milestone checklist for that age. So it's a really handy resource. Again, another really great gift to give to families, maybe on a child's birthday or something like that, or as they enter your program. These can also be ordered for free from the CD, from that free materials button. I will say that they are out of some of them right now, and they will restock in, I think it's November or December. So if they're out of them now, then just check back in a couple months and they should have more of them. So let's see. And then finally, the last really great resource that they have from the CDC is a training for early care and learning professionals. It's called Watch Me, Celebrating Milestones and Sharing Concerns. And we actually now have a version of this on our Georgia professional development system in our online learning library. So if you log into Georgia PDS, which is, this is the web address for it here, Georgia PDS at decal.ga.gov. If you log in there and you go to the trainings tab, you go to the OLLI, O-L-L-I trainings, and you can find the CDC Watch Me training. If you complete that training online, you get a free hour of childcare training credit. And then you also can order a free developmental monitoring starter kit. And in that kit, we have posters about developmental milestones. We also have the milestone moments booklets, and we have tablets of the checklists. So it's a really great opportunity for anyone in the early care and learning profession to learn about the process and also to get some of those resources. I will say you do have to be working in a licensed or exempt childcare program in order to receive the free kit. And that's just because of the grant that we have. So, and the limits from the grant. But really great resources and exciting opportunity for providers. So other really great resources for families. There is a handout that you can download from the CDC called How to Get Help for Your Child, and it gives really practical tips for the family on how to have a conversation with their medical provider. Simple things like talking, letting them know when you make the appointment that you have concerns so that they'll schedule a little bit longer appointment. Having someone come with you so that they can wrestle your busy toddler while you're talking to the doctor. And writing down your questions ahead of time. So some just very practical suggestions for families. Again, this is available to download from the CDC's website. And then they have some great positive parenting tips on the CDC's website, and just a bunch of different pages about child development that are really great to look at. So how do you get all these free materials? You go to cdc.gov/actearly, and then you'll see this beautiful free materials button. Free is always my favorite word. And then you click on that and you can look at all the different tools and materials that they have for tracking milestones. And then you can download those and or order them to be shipped directly to you for free. So I kind of hinted at this, that DECAL has actually created a developmental milestones website. And we have development.decal.ga.gov. And what we've done is taken the milestones and put them into a web-based family-friendly version. That's the QR code for our website that you can click on there to find, to go to the website, or the development.decal.ga.gov is the URL. And what we did is to create a little bit, what we felt like was a little bit more family friendly and easier access to the milestones. So up on the resources tab, this little, I don't know what they call a sandwich or whatever, this little 3 bars across menu icon, you can click and you'll see the additional resources tab. And on the additional resources tab, we've got all kinds of different resources related to families of young children in Georgia and supporting their child's development. But the other thing that we have on our website is that somehow that slide is missing, and I apologize. But on our website, you can actually look at the milestones side by side for 3 different ages. So you can select up to 3 different ages and look at those milestones, and those milestones will be, and then you can also download the milestone checklists and do the CDC's electronic milestone form, all from our website. So it's a really handy place to go to find Georgia-specific resources. So we are about to launch in the next couple of days an expanded set of resources We're going to have a page that you can see here that says Act Early in Georgia. It's going to actually outline the process for acting early when you have concerns about a child's development. And then we're also going to have several pages of supportive resources. And we've taken those resources and we've broken them down into the 5 family strengthening protective factors. So there are 5 things that have been identified as helping to strengthen families. And we decided that we wanted to align our resources with those 5 elements. So concrete supports in times of need is one of them. We renamed the resource pages to be something that would be a little bit more easily searchable for families, but we just called it Help for Families. And in there we have resources related to finding different food and education and health and different things like that. It'll help with bills, housing, those basic resources that families might need. Knowledge of parenting and child development is another one of those protective factors, and we call that child development and parenting resources. Social and emotional development is an additional protective factor, and we call that child behavior and emotional supports, and we have different resources related to that there. Parental resilience, and we call that caring for your family and you. And then finally, social connections, and we call that connecting with others, and have different links to different resources related to that on there. So lots of really exciting things happening with our webpage. Right now, it's available in English and Spanish, and by the end of the year, it will also be available in Korean, Vietnamese, and simple Chinese. So we're really excited about this this website and being able to connect families with the different resources that they need and having it as a tool that professionals can use. So how can you use these resources to engage with families? Monitoring development is a really great way to help connect with families when families know what to expect at each age of development and increases their knowledge of parenting and child development, which is one of the family strengthening protective factors. It also helps families to be aware of what to expect in case there is a concern. Excuse me, I'm really sorry about that. So it really helps families to understand what to expect developmentally. I like to share with people, with professionals in the field that, we've gone to school and studied about this stuff. So we know what child development looks like. And sometimes it's a challenge for us. But for families, understanding things like the fact that having a tantrum and saying no and stomping their little foot is very developmentally appropriate for 2-year-olds. And things like that. And that being really shy and not wanting to go to other people and clinging to their primary caregiver is also a developmentally appropriate thing and is one of the developmental milestones. And that can really help families to understand that, no, they're not rejecting you. That's just part of being attached to their primary caregivers, and that it's an important part of their development. So it can really help for families to understand. Plus, one of the best things about working with young children is to be able to celebrate their milestones, that when they do something new, we can share that with each other using a common language on the developmental milestone checklist, and we can celebrate it together. So it's really helpful to use these milestones as a milestone checklist as a way to converse with families. So the first thing that we recommend that providers do is that you embed developmental talk into conversations with families from the beginning. The last thing you want to do is start talking about child development when there's a concern. You want to be talking about a child's development from the first day that you're talking to that family and you're connecting with that family, and have it be a part of many of your conversations with them, so that when concerns arise, the family's not getting defensive from the start. That tiger mama thing is a real innate thing. And when you start talking about possible concerns about a child's development out of the blue, that's what's going to happen. They're going to get defensive. So having those conversations from the start is really important, so that if and when concerns arise, you can help have that, the family will be more open to it and less likely to get defensive and not want to act on those concerns. So as I said, celebrating accomplishments is very important. It's a great way to connect with families. It's a great way to connect with babies. And it's also just the best way to survive in a field that can be really frustrating sometimes. So just understanding that those accomplishments, those milestones for the babies, celebrating the accomplishments and the milestones for the families as a whole can be really helpful. And one thing we do recommend is that when you're talking with families about concerns is that you use what we call the sandwich strategy. And that is where you talk about positive things, you share something positive first, then you share the concern or that more negative item, and then you follow it up with another piece of positive information. So you're talking, so that negative piece or that concern is surrounded by the positive pieces. So letting the family know that you really care about their child and that you really do see all the great things their child can do, but you're also concerned about this one piece. You also want to focus on the specific developmental milestones in your conversation. You do not want to use any types of diagnostic labels. And even if a family asks you if you think their child has a specific diagnosis, I have been asked more than once if I feel like a child has ADHD or if I think a child has autism. And my response is always, I am not qualified to make that diagnosis. However, this is what I see. And I strongly urge you to talk to your child's doctor and your child's medical provider about your concerns. Or I strongly urge you to get a developmental screening and a developmental evaluation related to your concerns. So, and I will help you figure out how to do that. But I stay far away from any type of diagnostic labels because those, again, can bring up that defense mechanism for families, but also I'm not qualified to make those diagnoses. So we always start out by encouraging families to share their concerns with their medical provider and talking with their medical provider. However, we're also aware that there are still some medical providers out there who, one, either do not do developmental screenings on a regular basis, or two, still subscribe to the wait and see theory. And we don't subscribe to that. If you have concerns, then go ahead and get a developmental screening. So if a family has talked to their medical provider and their medical provider says they should wait and see, but the family still has concerns, or you do, then we recommend that they go ahead and act early. And this infographic shows the process for acting early in Georgia. I apologize, it looks a little bit blurry. I need to fix that. This is fresh off the presses, hot off the presses. We just got this together last week. We got it finished. And so I need to make sure I've got a better copy of it for my PowerPoint slides in the future. So, so if a child is missing milestones, then we always recommend that they have a developmental screening done. The best place to start is through Help Me Grow Georgia. The phone number for that is 888-HELP-GROW, HLP-GROW, or 888-457-4769. Help Me Grow provides wraparound services to families of children birth through 8. So it's not just for developmental concerns, it's all different types of concerns. But they will also make a referral for developmental screening, and they refer children to Children First, which is through the Georgia Department of Public Health. Children First will do a developmental screening, and they will also refer families on to Babies Can't Wait, or they will give families the contact information for their school district if their child is over the age of 3. So Babies Can't Wait is the early intervention service for children birth to 3 years old in Georgia, and then services for children 3 to 5 are provided through the local school district. And that is the school district that the family is zoned for, not where they work or where they go to childcare. And since many of our school districts overlap, that can be a concern for some families. So just so families understand that. So that's kind of the basic process in a very quick nutshell. Another wonderful resource that I strongly encourage families to reach out to is Parent to Parent of Georgia. They provide technical assistance to families related to developmental delays. They have a resources roadmap that gives families information about resources in their communities. And so the phone number and the web address are right here on the slide. Really wonderful. They actually have families, the majority of their employees are families of children with disabilities, and they have been trained on how to support families who are have concerns about their rights, about the process for evaluation and receiving services, all kinds of great information there. And then DeCal also has a wonderful resource called our Georgia Seeds for Success program. And one of the main goals of this program is to help reduce the rate of expulsion of children with disabilities and challenging behaviors in childcare programs. And we do that by having a cadre of inclusion and behavior support specialists across the state who work with childcare providers in a coaching model on how to support children in childcare programs who have disabilities and delays in their development, or children who are demonstrating challenging behaviors. And so you can call our SEEDS hotline, or you can email at inclusion@decal.ga.gov, and our intake person will assess the concern and refer it on to an inclusion and behavior support specialist who will work with you to address those concerns and needs. And so the other thing that we recommend for families when you're working with families and there's concerns is that you offer information on resources for the families. Early care and learning providers and can be a great source of resources for families. And also, if you have that good relationship, they may come to you with concerns about some of those basic needs for their family. And Find Help Georgia is a new resource that was just launched in early July. It's findhelpga.org or 800-244-5373. And Find Help Georgia is wonderful because you put in your zip code and it will and the type of resources you want, and it will bring up a list of resources that are available in that community. So really, really helpful. There's also some features for providers that you can actually keep records and tag resources that you share on a regular basis. All kinds of wonderful different things there. And the Prevent Child Abuse Georgia has been providing some instructional webinars on how to use findhelpga.org. And so I can get you information about those webinars if that's something that you would be interested in. So that's a lot of information in 43 minutes time, but I want to know, first of all, what questions you have. But then also, what resource do you think that you would be able to use to engage the families that you work with, and how might you use that resource? So I'm going to pull up the chat.
I was going to say, so far we've got one question: who inputs the information in findhelpgeorgia.org?
So Find Help is a company. That's an excellent question. Find Help is a company. That's a national company, and they have worked with other organizations across the state to input information from the different databases that they have. And what you can do is you can go in and see if a resource is not available, something that you work, like a company that you work with, or something like that is not listed, then you can contact them and give them the information and input that information, and they will vet it, and then they will add it to the resource system. It's really handy. So
great. What other questions do people have, or what other resources do you have to share?
I know I gave you a whole lot.
A lot of information. We'll give people just a minute to process it all and share ideas or ask questions.
Put the links in here too for the the two main websites that I put up there, the cdc.gov/actearly and the development.decal.ga.gov. And as far as those infographics are concerned, we are in the process of printing some of those infographics, the infographics in poster format and also in a handout format. So if that's something you would be interested in, go ahead and contact me and I can get some of those to you. This is my contact information. My real email address for Decal is my first and last name, but I know that it's really hard to spell. So we also have this child development email address and you're welcome to use that instead.
So this is your all's opportunity to ask Bridget anything you want to ask or share ideas that you've had. How does this apply to the work that you're doing? Bridget, I don't know if you can see the comments. As a provider, should you share the information during parent-teacher conferences twice per year, and or how would we address these resources throughout the year?
That's an excellent question. And I really think that that can be done in a variety of different ways. If you have newsletters that you send out to families, or if you have a social media account that you use with families, then share information there. If you look on our Decal social media on our Facebook page on Decal, we have Milestones Mondays where we share information. You could reshare those posts. We have links to the websites and things like that on there. We also have on Fridays, we have Family Engagement Fridays, and you could share those there. So we recommend that you are communicating with families about these different resources on a regular basis. And we have some, we actually have some webinars and some training in Georgia PDS about family engagement that talks about those different ways that you can communicate with families on a regular basis. So whether it is you have a newsletter or a, and yes, I agree, Bridget, not information dump that might be easily missed. Unfortunately, our Decal social media sometimes can feel that way because there's lots of information coming through on there every day. But if you give them something, maybe each month you can have a development corner on a newsletter or something like that. So thanks, Tammy, for sharing. So y'all use your home visiting program uses the resources, the milestone checklists and things on a regular basis. I'm glad to hear that. And Ashley, you say you just mentioned the parent-to-parent resource last week for a family who has concerns about autism. Oh, and I'm glad to hear you use the app personally with your 17-month-old. That's great. Yeah, it's the app. I love the app, and I wish we had something like that when I had my kids were little. But I'll be my oldest is 25. I didn't even get a cell phone until she was 3 years old. So I'm way beyond that. So,
apps were not a thing back then.
No, none of this was a thing back then. But I sure wish I had this kind of stuff because I like to tell the story that when my youngest. None of my children walked until they were 14 months old. And when I had my youngest in for her, I think it was her 15-month checklist, the doctor asked when she started walking. And I said, 14 months old. And he's like, well, why didn't you come ask me about that? And I was like, well, because it was the same age as her siblings. And, it's really not something to be really worried about until they're like 18 months old and, that kind of thing. But it was just, I wish I had the milestone checklist to be able to say, because look, it's not an issue until they're older kind of thing. So, because it made me doubt myself as a parent for a minute there. So, yeah, Harmony, 15 and 16 months is still within the age range of typical. And if you look at that milestone checklist, it's not until 18 months that there's concern if they're not walking by 18 months. Oh, and one thing I didn't really clarify is that if a child is between checklists, you're looking at that younger checklist. So if a child is between like 16 months old, you're looking at that 15-month checklist, not that 18-month checklist for concerns. Now, if they've met all the 15-month milestones, you'll look at that 18-month checklist to see what's coming next. but you're not really concerned until they reach 18 months and they're still missing some of the milestones on that checklist. So that's one question we get pretty frequently. But
other questions or comments for Bridget, or resources that you know of that you use? Just giving everybody a second to make sure. Sometimes I cut it off too quickly when people are trying to type.
Yeah, especially if you're on your phone, typing in the chat when you're on a phone or mobile device can really be hard.
Hi, Diane. Hi, Bridget. Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
One of the things that I use, and you all have actually already covered it, which are the Strengthening Family. I go to their website and use some of theirs as well during trainings, and also pass them out to families and even my own. So it helps to support all of this good stuff. I'm so excited to be here today.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yes, and Anissa is one of our trainers for, she was one of the early trainers that we had when we first started, before they had, before we had our website up and before we had the online training. We did face-to-face trainings with folks, and Anissa was one of our first trainers with that. So
I do also want to point out that Better Brains for Babies has just a very general developmental milestones kind of brochure with general year-by-year information. It does not replace any of the things Bridget's talking about because it's not intended to be anywhere near that specific. But if you need something quick to share with parents, you know, about what kinds of things are babies learning in the first year and the second year and so on, that is a resource as well. And we are in the process of creating a interactive version of that to go on our website as well. So that'll be another resource.
that's great. Yeah.
And we ought to link that to some of the developmental milestones, the more specific kinds of information. So if parents don't get the information from this general chart, they may want to look at more specific info.
That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah. And we can put the link to Better Brains for Babies on our resources for our website.
Fantastic. We interconnect things.
Yeah.
Other questions or other comments? Go ahead.
I see that Arnethia Anderson is on the call today, and she is one of our infant toddler specialists at DeKalb. And so we also have a program. It is a grant-based program that child care programs can apply and get coaching to increase the quality of your infant toddler programs. And it's an excellent program. We use the Lena technology to really increase the quality of interactions between providers and children in the infant toddler classrooms. So if that's something that you're not,
where would people go if they wanted more information about that?
You can reach out to me and I can connect you with Thea Stevens, our infant toddler coordinator. And yes, that's the Little Initiative. Thank you, Bridget. I can connect you with Thea Stevens, our infant toddler coordinator there. So there's also some information on our DeKalb website if you look under instructional supports and then the infant and toddler program.
And Bridget points out that the application period is accepting applications now. So if that's something that interests you, that's something to look at right away.
Awesome.
Other questions or comments or resources that you all know of? This is such a knowledgeable group. I love it. Bridget, did you see Ashley's comment about the Great Kids curriculum?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Great Kids Incorporated milestones. I'll have to look that up and see what that looks like. That's great. Yeah, and again, Ashley, that's exactly what I was talking about. That developmental monitoring is a really helpful way to kind of watch things in between the ASQs, the screenings. So it's really helpful as a way to kind of keep up with that development, but also just to have those conversations with families. You know, I did developmental, I did home visiting through Babies Can't Wait for about 12 years. And so, you know, sometimes parents have concerns or a family member might have a concern and it's like, how do I explain this, and having that checklist there would have been really handy, because I didn't want to pull out the whole evaluation thing, but being able to just pull up that checklist and say, hey, you know, here, let's look at this. Let's revisit this checklist and see where we are, and then what we can do to support those specific goals or milestones that maybe we have some concerns about. So it's nice to kind of just introduce a concept or something like that. So
we got several reactions in the from people, hearts and thumbs up and those kinds of things. Bridget's giving us a round of applause, giving you a round of applause.
There we go. So. My fellow Bridget there. It wasn't until I started working for Decal that I met all these other Bridgets. I've never been with all these Bridgets in a place where I worked with so many Bridgets before, but I guess we're all caregivers, and we're into that supporting young children, and that must be something to do with the name or something. So.
Any other questions or comments for Bridget R?
Yeah.
Any collaboration with the WIC program in utilizing the checklist?
Excellent question, Gwenna. Yes, we are working with them right now. They've been a little bit busy between the pandemic and all the formula recalls, but we've been working, we're in conversations with them on ways that we can get those resources out to them and talking and have them talking about it. But at the state level, they've just been quite overwhelmed between first the pandemic and then all the formula recalls. But I was actually just on a meeting last week with Todd Stormont at the State Department of WIC, and we're talking about some trainings to do with WIC providers, and then also even some policy changes that they can do related to that. So we're really excited about that conversation. And then the health departments actually just in the beginning of the year, in the spring, received shipments of all the milestone moments booklets. So I'm not sure if they went to the Children First or to the actual well child or well care visit folks who all got them at the different health departments, but they should all have a shipment. They are the older version of the books, because by the time we got the new versions, the printing had already been happening for the older versions, but it's there's still, you know, and for those of you who have access to the older versions of the resources, the recommendation is to use those up and then start getting the new ones, because they're still good resources. You know, nothing new or you know, earth-shattering happened with the revisions. It was really just shifting things around to clarify timing and make it a little bit easier for families to understand the development. So please use up those old resources first, and then we'll start getting the new ones out. There's actually a paper shortage right now, and so getting things printed is taking quite a while, and it's been a bit of a challenge. So who knew?
We've got several people saying thank you for all the great resources. They're planning to use them. Please join me in thanking Bridget for this great, very informative presentation.
It's been my pleasure.